Orgasmic enlightenment, where the sexual and spiritual come together. I'm Kim Anami, and I'm a holistic sex and relationship coach and a vaginal weightlifter. In this show, we explore all things intimate. I believe that our sexual energy is life force, creative energy, and we can use it to shape our worlds, strengthen our relationships, and self actualize. I blend the most avant-garde information from neuroscience, ancient sexual practices like Tantra and Taoism, to renegade wellness modalities to show you how to create gourmet sex in your lives. Come one, come all. The holy fuck. All of my work is about this, the ultimate alchemical union, the place where we toss everything into the fire and are reborn. Better, wilder, wiser, stronger, and wetter. As Carl Jung says about alchemy, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. This is the poetry and mantra of my life and my work, and all of it comes together beautifully in the marriage of sex and spirituality. I believe that all of the shame and taboo that has been imposed upon sexuality from the religious perspective is man-made, meaning this is not the word of God or spirit or the universal life force. It is, in fact, blasphemy, somehow implying that people are inherently dirty and that one of the highest acts of union that one could ever experience is, in fact, corrupted, is the product of the minds of men, not God. Many people come to me scarred from their religious upbringing. If it's not the shame for feeling sexual desire, then they, both men and women, are struggling to rationalize the Madonna whore dichotomy that is constantly shoved in everyone's face or crotch. And this is the idea that women can either be virgins or whores. There is no happy medium of healthy, voracious sexual appetite in women. She's damned if she does and damned if she doesn't. The constraints of religion are a big topic for many people. That's why I am delighted in today's episode to feature a couple, one half of whom is an Episcopal priest who loves and worships at the altar of his wife's pussy, who transforms their relationship from a place of sexual dissociation to wild, holy, deep, born-again sexual liberation. Here's Andy and Olga. Well fucked all-stars. Welcome, Andy and Olga. It is lovely to have you here.
So lovely to be here.
Great to be here.
So let's dive into the holy fuck. So tell me a bit about where you started before you came to this work, how your views were on the merging or the separation of sex and spirituality, and then where that's come to now.
I would say that I never put sex and spirituality together, ever. I think that's a fair statement. Growing up, sex was it was definitely something that could get you pregnant too soon. And I guess it could also get you sick. And abstinence was the high road. And yeah, sex and spirituality never went together from my point of view. Yeah.
I'd say something fairly similar. I didn't really have a traditional spirituality growing up, had a lot of mama issues, which we probably shouldn't spend a ton of time on, but, definitely grew up sort of surrounded by this constant barrage of messaging that, mom was to be the one really throughout my whole life who was the closest and most intimate person, and anyone else was a threat. So that definitely threw a monkey wrench in the burgeoning of sexuality in young adulthood. It wasn't until young adulthood that I really became a committed Christian. And if anything, that sort of gave me a more expansive sexuality, which might sound funny because stereotype would suggest it would do the opposite. but at least there was sort of the beginnings of the idea that this was a spiritual path and not simply about physical pleasure. That certainly it was, the union of body, mind, and spirit were all of a piece, and not three separate things. At least cognitively, I began to get that, but it was only very recently that that became an experienced reality.
But I would say that in our marriage, that wasn't there for us for decades.
Yeah.
The sexual piece.
Well, the seeing sexuality and spirituality as one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, that the union of our bodies was completely intertwined with every other form of union we were trying to build up in our marriage.
Yeah, I just didn't see them as the same, sex and spirituality. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So what happened? What made you guys dive into looking at your sex life or deepening that or healing that? And what happened?
I would say, that Andy definitely had more of an interest in sexuality and, just basically wanted us to have sex more. And I just kept complaining, like, yeah, me too, but I just don't have a libido. Like, where is my libido? And it was so frustrating to me because I had enjoyed sex before and I had a libido before, but it just felt like for years, I guess, it just disappeared. And that was so frustrating to me. And I know it was so frustrating to Andy too. And probably we somehow manifested learning about you. Like, I think at some point I was just like, okay, I have to do something about this. I have to figure out how to find a libido again. And Kim, I heard you I had followed Wim Hof for a long time, and I heard your I got the newsletter from Wim Hof that you had interviewed him, and I was like, whoa, wait, someone talking about sex interviewing Wim Hof. So I listened to that right away, and I just fell in love with you. And I listened right away to every free podcast and free video that you had. And that's kind of where it started. Yeah, that was like summer 2019. And I listened to every free thing you had. And I think I wrote saying, like, I need vaginal kung fu. When is it coming? Because I didn't know, when it was going to be offered again. And as soon as it was offered, I signed up right away. And that was kind of the start of it.
Fantastic. So you dove deep into your vagina, into your sexual self-knowledge. And what happened? So you've talked about how you guys, you've taken all the salons, correct?
Vaginal Kung Fu, Coming Together, and Sexy Mama.
I still have to do Sexual Mastery for Men. I haven't done that yet.
Okay, great. And so tell me how your relationship began to shift, because I know that one of the major examples or culminations of your work together was your baby. But before even your third baby, but before even getting to there, like, what kind of changes then did you see in your sex life?
Well, I think that our journey in how we brought babies into this world is a huge, it really represents the overall journey very well. So, I mean, we had a pretty lackluster sex life for the most part. I mean, with good moments here and there, going into our first child. And then things just really took a nosedive during that pregnancy. I mean, first of all, we stopped having sex at all. But secondly, I just, we did it a pretty standard Western medical way. I mean, hired some midwives, but they were hospital based and basically did the same thing that any OB practice would do. And after the first visit, I was just horrified, because first of all, I was like, oh my gosh, there is this whole world, literally inside of my wife that I'm just so fascinated by and never knew about. And I have no access to it. And instead, these total strangers are sticking instruments and gloved fingers in there, and we aren't doing anything. And I just took a complete nosedive. And things improved a little bit with the second pregnancy, but it wasn't until we found your courses that we even began to develop a common language where I could explain just how unbelievably fascinating and wonderful, and not just in a physical pleasure kind of way, but like a deeply spiritual way. Um, I found Olga's body and her sex organs, and I never ever get tired of exploring and finding new ways to just discover what's there and give her pleasure and receive pleasure myself. I mean, it just never ever gets old. And I think I'll have to let Olga explain it herself, but until we started taking your courses, I think that seemed kind of weird and creepy and just not quite right to her. And now we're totally together on that. And it culminated with a free birth. I mean, finally, the only two people in the room doing anything the entire pregnancy and the birth itself were me. I mean, my hands were the first human hands to touch our baby before he came out, and the only human hands to touch him, except for his sisters, for the first few months of his life were ours, and it just felt so amazing and right.
You know what I love?
Yeah,
I'll let you speak in a moment, Olga, but I just wanted to say that I really like that your instinct kicked in. Like when you saw these strangers putting their hands in your woman's vagina and, instruments in her vagina, that something in you was just instinctively like, that's wrong. Like that there's something not right about this. Like, this is not everyone's property, right? Like, this is my woman and her body, and this is an intimate act, and this just intuitive sense that this is something for you guys to embark upon, not this thing that's shared with strangers. I really like that, because that, obviously I'm a big proponent of free birth, and so to hear that your instinct was right, because I think that a lot of people through that process will question their instincts or dismiss their instincts and feel, perhaps a sense of revulsion seeing that, but then just brush it off, right? And be like, well, these are the experts. What do we know? We have to turn all of our power over to them, right? So I love that you had that recognition and that became a guiding principle for you. So, and that, through this work that you were able to reaffirm that your desire for your wife's body and her pussy were, to have that insatiable desire for her pussy was actually completely natural and normal, right? Rather than feeling disconnected from it. So, Olga, what was your experience of that?
oh, absolutely. That is such a good summary of it. I mean, when he was, repulsed by all of this, I was still entrenched in Western medicine, and I was just, saying like, well, it's just a medical thing. That's just what, that's just what's done. And that, now it's just a complete, it's been a long journey since then, and I have in steps stepped away from Western allopathic medicine since then. But um, at the time I was still entrenched in it, and so I was like, like what's wrong? Why is this so repulsive? And but now it just makes so much sense, and I'm so proud of it now, and so thankful for it now, and for Andy's view now. And yeah, and just the way this birth is just amazing in that sense, just absolutely amazing. So yeah, that's a great summary of it, that his instincts were just spot on. I was still entrenched in in the first birth, I was still entrenched in Western allopathic medicine, that I couldn't appreciate it. But now, I so appreciate it now. Yeah, and in terms of our sex life, as soon as I started listening to you, it just exploded. I mean, it just exploded, and we started having sex all the time, and yeah, during vaginal kung fu, we started having sex all the time, and then got pregnant at the end of vaginal kung fu. At the age of, I was 43 at the time, and he was 44. And here we are, pregnant, and ecstatic about it. But yes, absolutely, that's a great summary, that his instincts were just fabulous, and I couldn't appreciate it at the time, but wow, do I appreciate it now.
But I got to add something else to it. I mean, our relationship was in a completely different spot at that time. So when tensions would arise, and this one was a big tension, we end up in this kind of adversarial space where each saw the other as the problem, and it turned into a big fight. And then as we, like Olga said, when she completed VKF, and our sex life just really exploded in the best possible way. I think in both of us, there was a really big switch that got flipped in our minds, like, oh, sex has been an area of a lot of tension for us for 2 decades now. And if we can come together on this, we can come together on anything.
Yeah,
and so
that's true.
now, it's not like we agree on everything now. There's still plenty of areas of life where, just today we were batting something around where we're seeing things pretty differently. But there's no longer that adversarial stance. There's just like, okay, there's tension. This is cool. We know how to handle
Yeah,
that.
but our sex life has totally unified us.
Absolutely.
So that we can, even if we come across an issue where we're seeing things differently, we can come at it from a unified place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you would say,
together.
So what's that again?
So definitely most of the time, I'd say the overwhelming majority of the time when a tension arises, we go straight to, okay, this is a problem to solve together.
Right. Okay. So it sounds like then having your sex life as this real foundation there's that baby, that having your sex life as the foundation, maybe I'll pause. Do you need a moment? I'll just let the baby land.
He's just switching sides, nursing the other side.
Okay. So it sounds like having this foundation of your sex life has given you the strength that even when you do come to obstacles or disagreements, that you have that ultimate base within each other, right? That makes it harder to push you off. It's like having remember Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down? Are you guys old enough for that? Right? So these toys that you can like push over and they go from side to side, but they never actually fall down, right? And I think that when a couple has that strength and that rooting power together, then that's what happens when they come upon things. And I love something that you had written into us, and you had said that when you had your sights set on a free birth, and these courses that you took with me reinforced that. But we knew that in order to maximize chances of success, we had to get really serious about clearing fears and traumas and being in a state of deep physical, mental, and emotional connection. And I love that, because that's what we talk about. The foundation of my work is that we need to clear out the blockages between us, right? Whatever is preventing us from coming together and feeling like we do want to have sex every day. And I love what you said, that in your previous pregnancies, you say you don't think you'd even had sex once, and maybe once, and that during this pregnancy you saw it as your duty. You had sex nearly every day, and even the night before he was born.
Yep, absolutely.
Night before he was born, we actually hit some new highs, I'd even say.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Like you were talking about the Weeble Wobble toys. I never saw our sex life. I never realized that our sex life could be like that foundation that keeps the toy from toppling over. I never saw it in that light. Yeah. And I think that's what I mean when I now see sex and spirituality as merged as one. Like in our relationship, I never saw sex as that, as something that could be the foundation. So that was a real shift in my mindset. Yeah. But yes, we did have sex all the time during this pregnancy, all the time.
And I marvel at the unbelievable power of all this, because like I said, I mean, we'd been married 20 years, together for 22 before we even started this path. And postpartum has had its roadblocks. We're slowly getting our sex life back up to where it was during pregnancy. So we're talking about maybe a little over a year versus 21 plus years, that has been enough to completely change the wiring. I mean, just, a little bit of yeast leavens the whole batch. We keep looking at each other saying we cannot unlearn what we've learned. So
Mm-hmm.
even if we have a rough day or a rough week and, sex goes out the window for several days or whatnot,
There's no way we're going
there's
back.
no way we're going back. Yeah.
We've told each other that. Like, oh yeah, we know too much now.
That's amazing. I love it. Share with me a little bit more. You had said, Olga, I see Andy's hands, his cock, as magic wands healing me.
Yeah. So when we first got together and started having sex, I would get a UTI every time, every time that we had sex. And, I went to Western allopathy and I, did the whole antibiotics, even prophylactic antibiotics. I mean, I took so many antibiotics. It's just, it's unreal then looking back on it. But anyway, every time we'd have sex, I'd get a UTI. So then I had this neural pathway that sex equals UTI. And he, and I think there was even like a bit in you thinking like, I'm hurting her, we have sex, but it's hurting her.
Right.
And, we had, I, like I said, I started to step away from Western allopathic medicine as time, over the decades. So we found some things that helped. And I changed my diet and started leading a much more healthy lifestyle. So the UTIs diminished, but they didn't completely go away. Yeah. And so in your prodding and your poking incessantly, persistently, and not letting up, saying like, if you have a UTI, you've got to look at it from all perspectives and like, what's causing that? Like where is that coming from? And so, we did some digging and some block clearing and some trauma clearing. And now I see him as, and we found G-spot orgasms. That was a huge deal. Mm-hmm. And I gush now. And so now I have this neural pathway that no, sex is actually healing me and healing the UTI, or definitely not causing it, and definitely healing it. So yes, now I see his hands and his cock as magic wands, and they heal me, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
And I've had a change in mindset too. I mean, I actually see sex play and the sexual act as also a prayerful thing. I mean, I definitely believe that there's such a thing as healing prayer, humans being able to channel some kind of divine healing power for one another. And so, without getting rid of the playfulness at all, I can be in that headspace too. And so I'm actually kind of imagining light passing through my fingers or my tongue or my cock, and going to the places where it's most needed. So there's definitely something going on in both of us that's very different from before.
That is amazing.
And UTIs are gone. I mean, they're gone. They're not coming back.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So tell me a little more about this, the sex healing prayer, because that is such a beautiful perspective. And given your background, which we haven't explicitly stated yet, but you're an Episcopal priest, and that you have, that you're using your sex life in this way, as we've said, this merging of the sexual and the spiritual, and, with that conscious intention, really elevating the sex act, but using it for its highest purpose of really, how would you describe that then from that spiritual perspective?
The pause is because you're starting to edge me toward the place where it gets a bit wordless.
I love that. Elevate the sex act to the highest purpose. I love that.
Well, I guess the way I would put it is this. I believe that the entire purpose for human existence is to intimately love and make love to as many elements of creation as we can possibly connect to. But that in the case of our marriage, there's one person in my life for whom I'm called to just take that to a whole different level. Um, and, like Olga said, both of us grew up with a little bit of the culture of, you know, sex being the lower road and other things, connections of the mind, platonic connections of the spirit being much more the high road. And I've come to see that that actually cheats us out of something absolutely amazing. That there is a connection and a channeling of energy, and especially healing energy, but all kinds of different energy. I mean, just the kind of energy that results in me jumping out of bed in the morning, ready to go after the day with gusto, rather than dreading whatever comes next. Um, and that passes through physical intimacy. Um, it doesn't happen automatically. It happens only when we bring real intention to it. But when we do, uh, I'm discovering the rewards are just limitless. And as somebody who believes that God is very real, I absolutely would say God is in that.
I love that. I mean, I'm very open about how I think that the sexual and spiritual are so similar. The idea of surrender and opening and letting a power greater than us enter into us, right? Like to me, from the start, there's always been that parallel. And these are my two favorite things: sex and spirituality, sex and God. And so, and we were speaking about this before we started recording, but how I see that there's been this perversion over the millennia, where I do think that that this was never by nature separated. It was a man-made separation that created this division and the shame and the taboo around it. But that, naturally, innately speaking, this is all, like you said, you said it very eloquently, this way of making love with life passionately, and that's best expressed within the microcosm of your intimate relationship. So I love that. Is there anything else that you want to share in that realm of the sexual and the spiritual coming together?
Well, I think I could say another word about the sort of twisting and perversion that you talk about. And, that even for those folks who are at all familiar with the New Testament and with the tradition that goes with it, you even see it happening there. I mean, Jesus doesn't say a single pejorative word about sex anywhere. None of that's to be found. That's found later in the New Testament when you read somebody like Paul, and even he is pretty clearly responding only to very unconscious and consumptive and abusive forms of sex, which I think he saw in the ancient Near East all over the place. But we've then, over the centuries, taken that and tried to universalize it and basically say, well, because of these, and I mean, it's like 10 whole verses in the whole thing. I mean, it's tiny by comparison to so many other areas that get emphasized. But because of these 10 little verses, clearly, sex is this base thing that needs to happen behind closed doors only, and only in a very narrow context. And it's really something kind of dirty and shameful. But that's a complete misread of what's actually there, especially if you understand the historical context.
Yeah, fantastic. I would think that that's true, that that's been tainted by interpretations or human interpretations over the years. It's not really the will of God or nature. So anything else you want to say? I asked Olga about your magical healing hands and cock, and you talked about the love affair that you've had with her pussy, and that you finally allowed yourself to really go for it. Is there anything else you would add about that?
again, I think for me, it's again like reframing sex that made me so excited that you had a love affair with my pussy, you know? Um, yeah, that made it not just okay, but fabulous and
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah, for some of the non-intercourse home play that you suggest has just been so amazing. Like,
Yes.
I'm one of those guys who, I can go after a yoni massage for 2 or 3 hours at a time and not even start getting bored. And I've always been that way. And for you to suddenly show up in our lives encouraging this, and me to be able to look at Olga and say, see, that's what I've always wanted to do. And now do you understand why I find this so fascinating and why I get as much pleasure out of it as I hope you do? Um, it's just been absolutely amazing. And it just amazes me how rare it seems that is. I mean, um, if I just get on social media or the internet or something, women complaining right and left, like, all my partner wants to do is stick it in there and be done in 10 minutes. The thought of spending a full day on foreplay before we even begin doing that is just unconscionable. And I'm thinking, what a bunch of idiots. Missing out on so much.
And for me to then, for me to then just so appreciate that and feel so lucky.
Well, it sounds like this was your intuition again, that Andy talking about, the origin of the universe, right? The allusion to the yoni as being, and it is really, that's the portal between life and death. And that perhaps in your quest for spiritual growth, that this also manifested instinctively through her yoni, right? That is the source and that is the power portal there. So I love that.
I mean,
Yeah.
I had an incredible experience during Zach's birth. I mean, when Olga went into transition, and as often happens during transition, kind of went into this otherworldly space, between life and death. There was a lot of fear and uncertainty going on, and she just said, like, I need you to tell me where I'm at. And so I wasn't even really, I really had thought, okay, this is going to be a truly free birth. I'm going to be standing here and supporting all the way. And instead, I ended up checking, and I mean, she was almost fully dilated, but still needed a little bit of help with an anterior lip before he could come out. And we went through this, just from my point of view. I know Olga would say, like, she was so ready to be done, that that's all she could focus on. But from my point of view, this sexual and spiritual connection that just transcended anything I have ever experienced. I mean, the next hour we were just in that space and trying to get that last little bit out of the way. And then half an hour later, we had a beautiful baby in our hands. And yeah, like you said, I felt like I was touching not just my son, but the origin of the universe. It was unbelievably powerful.
I love that. So is there anything else that either of you would like to add that you feel we haven't touched on or you want to expand upon?
I think just the profound, I think just emphasizing the profound shift in thinking around sex. I don't know, just, oh my gosh, it's just been amazing. I mean, just amazing. I don't know, just making life exciting again, and our relationship so strong, and yeah, strong enough that we can, deliver a baby by ourselves.
Well, I think that the birth experience is really, I talk about this a lot, the reflection of the state of the couple. And when the couple is in really deep harmony and they're intimately connected, not just emotionally, but sexually connected, because birth is a sexual act, it's the culmination of the sexual act, that the birth is typically then very smooth and easy, and it actually brings the couple closer together. But when a couple comes into a birth and they still have issues and separation and unresolved stuff, then that comes into the birth space, and that manifests as blockages and stalls and complications in birth. And then that will usually serve to create a bigger rift between the couple. They walk out of there feeling more disconnected and separated, and often in shock and trauma from what's happened in the birth experience. And they don't, and then that cultural narrative is just like, oh, well, it's natural to not have that much sex after you have a baby. And it's not really that. It's that this couple's just gone through often hell together in the birth experience, and they walk out feeling so disconnected and have no language to articulate that. They're not allowed to discuss it. And so you are a great example of doing the work. And you said, because you'd been immersed in my work at that point, to realize, okay, we want this free birth. Now we kind of know why we want it, why we've instinctively wanted it, or at least that, Andrew, you were clear on that. And then that taking the steps, like knowing that you had that clearing work to do to really make the space for that to happen, and that your intimate connection was the key for that to happen.
Yeah, it definitely was. And it definitely, it was a textbook birth and smooth. And yes, it was definitely all of this, the foundational work that we did, the foundational sexual work that we did that made it that way, for sure. Another thing, Ken, that I wanted to add, that how profoundly this birth and our, healing our sex life has just gone back in time and healed like the previous two births as well,
Yeah.
That has been super powerful also.
I think we've got two older girls, and I think they have felt that. I mean, especially out here in California, we have been on some degree of lockdown for longer than I care to admit. And, rather than being one of those families that's just imploded because we can't get away from each other, we've really kind of delved into, okay, well, since we got to be here together anyway, let's get closer and let's talk about difficult topics, and let's take advantage of all this family bonding time. And I think they have felt that we're actually in a space to do that and to do it well.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I love that you're commenting on that this birth was able to heal the other birth experiences and then create this infusion of healing energy that went backwards in time and into the rest of your family.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. All right. Any final last words?
If anyone's on the fence of taking courses, just do it. Yeah, it's definitely life-changing. Definitely.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your stories with us.
Thank you.
If you'd like to learn how to cultivate the life-changing holy fuck, join me in the Coming Together for Couples Salon. In this 10-week online program, I show you how to radically overhaul your relationship, taking it from the humdrum to the wild, powerful, and multi-orgasmic. We cover everything from communication skills to orgasm skills and all things in between. To check out the free preview video series, go to kimanami.com, look for Sexual Savant Salons, and click on Coming Together. The salon begins in a few weeks. Are you coming? Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, subscribe and also leave a review. And send someone else the gift of a healthy libido and an off-the-charts love life by sharing this episode with them. We'll be back next week, and in the meantime, many happy orgasms.